Alright, so I decided to do a video on my Kenmore Progressive. This is the Kenmore Progressive 21514. I think there's only been one video of it online or on YouTube that I've seen. They made this in the white, which is your entry-level, top-of-the-line model. And then they also made like a lower-end model. And they always did two. They did one that came with the quick connect and the quick disconnect for the power nozzle, and they usually did, I think the first generation that I remember, they did in a pastel green and blue, and the power nozzle didn't have these nub things that stuck out. It was just a smooth-sided power nozzle on those machines. Then they moved that to the teal and tangerine colored ones, and they were white accented, like a white bumper like this machine has. And then they also did the newest generation, which is like a burnt orange color. And they also sell a red. And then the purple, I believe, is the highest end, which gives you all the features. But they lost the fingertip on-off controls. But mine specifically is a 2012 model. They still sell this model too, because Kenmore has not redesigned, or they may not actually sell this model anymore. I feel like I've seen it in Sears, but I really wanted it because I liked the white. They made the blueberry color too, but the blueberry color was a little bit more than what I was willing to spend, but it had the adjustable handle, and it had like an extra foot of hose, which I would have actually really liked. But the main compartment to the canister actually seals up pretty good. It's got a nice big rubber seal on it. But you can see, it's pretty dusty. I haven't used this vacuum in... Well, I haven't used the vacuum since I made the video of this against some of my other machines. I think I did this against, like, my Oryx or something like that. Kind of a strange comparison, but something like that. So, this is pretty dirty inside, but not until I bought, I think, my Kenmore Intuition did I ever see a vacuum with a clean inside. My Kenmore, and I didn't even notice it for a while until I was, like, really looking at it. I'm like, geez, this thing's spotless on the inside. So, this is probably because I use paper bags. And that was back when I was, you know, into vacuums, but I didn't know a whole lot about them. Now, they always told me that I put the bag in incorrectly, which I don't see how, because to me, if you were to put the bag into the vacuum like the way that they said, which is like this, with the bag pointed down, the bag folds onto itself. You can see the bag leaks a little bit of dust, but they said that the bag goes in like that. That doesn't make any sense at all. So, I always put the bag in like this. To me, this makes sense. You put the bag in like that, and then the bag lays flat inside the vacuum. To me, that makes sense, but apparently that's not right. So the premotor filter is pretty dirty. But again, I didn't maintain this machine when I owned it, so that's kind of my fault. And it has a kind of strange locking mechanism. I normally, if I hit it hard enough like that, it fixes itself. And it'll even close itself too. You just kind of have to, what it does is it gets hung up on itself, but that's how it stays open. And you just kind of have to jiggle it a little bit and it will close. And this is the Hepa filter. It's dirty because it is dirty. You can see. Look at that. Look at that. But this is like several years worth of vacuuming. And I mean, there's more dirt in it. So that's not just motor carbon. And sorry that it's in the sunbeam, but I purposely opened that window so you could see this. Woo! We don't have any allergy sufferers in my house, so we aren't gonna die or choke. So, I will put this back in to the back of the canister. The filters are pretty cheap. You can get them pretty much anywhere. And pop this on the back like that. So these are pretty common canisters, and they're actually pretty popular. They probably sell more of these a day than they will ever sell a Miele, because these are more readily available, and they are advertised to be a full functioning power team. And when I was little, the way I saw a full-size high-end canister, I always imagined a Kenmore, because I wasn't aware growing up of expensive machines and what they sold in vacuum stores and stuff like that, and the differences between quality and not quality. I do like this machine, however, even though it doesn't have very good filtration, which again is partially due to my fault, because I never once used a cloth bag in this, and I kind of treated it at the time the way that my parents treated theirs, and it was like the whole house vacuum, and I used it for several years. It's never had a Hepa change. I've never changed that Hepa filter, so that again is partially due to my problem. And the backside though of the Hepa is clean, so it does trap all the visible dirt, and it might leak some out. I'm not saying that it won't, but I still like the machine. It served us well for several years, and I honestly think that it was something that pioneered me into liking canisters, so I don't necessarily have any ill will against the vacuum at all. It served us well, and it still runs like a champ, and it's still in excellent condition. It's not in mint condition because there's a couple rough-ish spots from where I've had it standing up on itself, but it does have fingertip controls. You have a fingertip on-off. That's low. That's high. It's variable. And the suction is really good on this. So this was their first generation, and it might have even been their last, of these handles that were kind of like, they were called crossover handles. Maybe that's an Electrolux term. But they combined your main use tools right at hand. So the Crevice Tool is full size, and it pops right on. The unfortunate side about this Crevice Tool is, though, it does have air release vents here, and that's in good shape. But on this side, if you look in there, if it'll focus, it's chipped because, ooh, there we go, that's better. It's chipped because of the way that it locks onto the vacuum. You put the top inside first, like, well, maybe I can't get it. Oh, okay, here we go. You put this top in right here on this clip, and then it's very hard to do one-handed. Okay, you're gonna have to do it from below. So you put this in this right here, and then you snap it on like that. So that stays on there. And then, this has always kind of been a pain to get off this big brush here. It kind of reminds me of a horse hoof. It's a big dusting brush, and it also doubles as an upholstery tool, though it's kind of a lousy upholstery tool. You press this, and that comes off. You don't have to have this on to use it to vacuum, but that's how it stores on the machine. And we'll check the suction. It does have good suction. And the air that comes out of it smells like plastic because it's not in rough shape, and it might be dusty and it might not filter that well, but it doesn't stink. It smells like plastic. It smells like it did when I first bought it. The only complaint that I have about it is the play that's in the wand, like this, and it doesn't swivel, and it's kind of hard to get it to stand up. So you've got this problem when you're using it. It makes you think that it swivels, but it doesn't. It doesn't really jiggle side to side, and you do have multiple height settings, which is what this pedal is for here. But when you put it up into standing upright, it doesn't lock. You have to push it forward quite a bit to get it to stand. And again, there it's tipping backwards. It won't stand by itself. So that's my complaint with this. You kind of have to play with the hose attached to the canister to get it to stand if you want it to stand. So I have some salt down, some oatmeal, and some oatmeal. I have it on high suction. Okay, so if you saw my Mila video and that versus the Kirby, there wasn't a single grain of salt that moved in front of the Mila. Not a single grain. And there's nothing wrong with my Mila. It's practically brand new. I've only had it for a year, but I've only used it maybe 10 times. And that didn't move any salt, but this does. And it's kind of funny because people rave so much about the Milas, which I love my Mila, don't get me wrong, and hate on these cheap plastic vacuums, and it didn't move the salt. So, we will check and look. There is no salt in this carpet. None. Not a single grain of salt. Okay, so then we'll move on to the big pile. The one annoyance that I also have about this cord always comes out. Anytime you touch this, you can see when you move the handle up and down, the cord moves. Already jumping at the vacuum. So it did leave some pieces. We'll see what it'll do with the back pass. Picked almost everything up. There we go. So, it did leave some pieces, but I've never had any machine except for one of my Oryx be able to pick up every piece of oatmeal. And that was a big pile. I sprinkled a little bit over here. You can see it grooms the carpet very nicely. But I only sprinkled a little bit over here, and I made a big trail. And it did leave a piece here, which actually flicked out of the way. If you look at the carpet line that I vacuumed here, you can see that this line right here, it's like right in that line. But it grooms the carpet very well, and it actually does deep clean very well. Yes, it has its drawbacks because the filtration isn't all that great. But take your Hoover Wind Tunnel T-Series. Take your, take my frickin' Hoover Wind Tunnel canister that I have in my bedroom. That thing, the bag chamber, just using it 2 times since I bought it, is coated with dust. There are select few canisters out there that you can buy, and select machines out there that you can buy that have adequate filtration compared to something that you can buy in a vacuum store. Otherwise, this vacuum is a great vacuum cleaner. No, the filtration is not great, but if you upgrade the filter or the bag to cloth, I'm sure it would be much better. And again, that's a 5-year-old Hepa filter in there, so that's my fault. Otherwise, it's a great machine with a couple drawbacks.